Commander Valkon Jur of the hegemony battlecruiser Righteous Judgment stretched his forearms in a gesture of supreme satisfaction. His violet skin glistened under the command deck's lights as he gazed at the tactical display showing the destroyed human vessel. "Record this for the Imperial Archives," he announced to his crew. "Today marks another victory for the Zeraxian hegemony against the primitive humans. Their pathetic vessel has been eliminated from our territory." Sub-Commander Laric approached cautiously, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "Commander, sir. Our scanners indicate the vessel we just destroyed was transmitting on emergency frequencies. The translation algorithms suggest it was a hospital ship." Valkon waved a dismissive hand. "Propaganda, obviously. These humans are deceptive creatures. They disguise warships as medical vessels. Do you think I hatched yesterday?" "But sir," Laric persisted, "our scanners detected no weapons systems. And the ship was clearly marked with the human symbol for medical aid, a red cross against white background." "Clever camouflage," Valkon huffed. "The humans think us fools. They've been encroaching on hegemony space for months. This will teach them to respect our boundaries." "Fairies," the communications officer interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Zeraxian High Command." "Put it through," Valkon ordered, straightening his ceremonial collar. The holographic projection of Fleet Admiral Zerax appeared before them, her expression severe even by Zeraxian standards. "Commander Valkon," she began, her voice colder than the void between stars, "what exactly have you done?" Valkon puffed his chest proudly. "Admiral, I've defended our territory against human intrusion. Their vessel attempted to penetrate our border and, you absolute incompetent fool." Admiral Zerax hissed, causing Valkon to physically recoil. That vessel was a registered humanitarian ship. It was transporting medical supplies to the Rigelian colony suffering from plague. "But Admiral," Valkon stammered, "humans are our enemies. They are part of the Galactic Accord, which we signed 3 solar cycles ago," Zerax roared. "That ship had clearance. It had diplomatic passage. It was following the exact coordinates we approved." The command deck fell silent as the implications settled over everyone like toxic gas. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Admiral Zerax continued, her voice now dangerously quiet. "The humans have been remarkably patient with our adjustment period to the Accord. But this? Firing on a clearly marked hospital ship? This is beyond diplomatic incident." Valkon's skin paled to a sickly lavender. "Surely the humans understand mistakes happen in space. We can offer compensation." Admiral Zerax laughed, a sound entirely devoid of humor. "Compensation? Commander, you don't understand humans at all. They're mostly peaceful. Yes, surprisingly accommodating, given their history. But there's one thing you never, ever do to humans." She leaned closer to the projection device on her end, her face filling the hologram. "You never harm their healers. Their entire culture holds medical personnel as sacred. It's one of their oldest taboos." What will they do?" Valkon asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if on cue. The ship's sensors blared an alert. The tactical officer nearly jumped out of his exoskeleton. "Sir. Multiple warp signatures detected, hundreds of them. They're coming from Earth direction." "How many vessels?" Valkon demanded. "At least 300, sir." "No, wait, more are appearing. 500, 700. They keep coming." Admiral Zerax's expression was now one of resignation. "You're seeing the human response, Commander. NECA. They call it the Fleet of Fury. It's a rapid response force mobilized only under very specific circumstances." The communications officer interrupted again. "Sir. Incoming transmission from the human fleet." The main screen flickered to life, displaying a human female in a stark black uniform adorned with minimal silver insignia. Her face was a mask of controlled rage, her gray eyes like twin supernovas about to explode. "This is Admiral Prisha Tamboli of the United Earth Defense Force," she announced without preamble. "You have committed an act of war by firing upon the unarmed hospital ship Mercy's Hand. We recovered 43 survivors. 278 medical personnel and patients were killed in your attack. Valkon felt his legs weaken beneath him. Admiral, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding. Admiral Tamboli cut him off. Your vessel fired without warning on a clearly marked medical ship traveling on pre-approved coordinates. Her voice remained eerily calm, which somehow made it more terrifying than if she'd been shouting. We demand immediate surrender of your vessel, and all personnel responsible for this war crime, she continued. You have 15 minutes to comply before we open fire. The transmission cut off abruptly. Admiral Zerax sighed heavily from her still-active hologram. I suggest you comply, Commander. I've seen what happens when humans feel their medical personnel have been targeted. The last species that deliberately attacked a human hospital ship no longer exists as a spacefaring civilization. But Admiral Valkon protested. Surely the hegemony wouldn't allow. The hegemony, Zerax interrupted sharply, has already issued a formal apology to Earth. We've disavowed your actions and made it clear you acted without authorization. The tactical officer's voice cracked as he reported, Sir. The human fleet has surrounded us completely. They've deployed in a spherical formation. There's no escape route. Valkon collapsed into his command chair, all four arms hanging limply. They wouldn't really destroy us, would they? Over one little ship? Lorek, who had been studying human culture as a hobby, spoke up. Sir, humans have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. They believe failing to respond to an attack on healers makes them complicit in future attacks. Philosophical nonsense, Valkon muttered. Admiral, surely you can negotiate. The time for negotiation was before you fired on their hospital ship, Zerax replied coldly. Now we face the consequences of your actions. And make no mistake, Commander, this is entirely your doing. The tactical display updated, showing the human fleet moving into attack formations with mathematical precision. Look at that, whispered the weapons officer. Such coordination. Such discipline. There was reluctant admiration in his voice. Admiral Tamboli is hailing us again, reported the communications officer. The human admiral appeared on screen once more, her expression unchanged. Your time is up. Commander Valkon Jur, she stated. What is your response? Valkon swallowed hard, looking from the human admiral to his own fleet admiral, whose hologram showed clear expectations. I surrender myself and my crew to Earth authorities, he finally croaked. A thin smile appeared on Admiral Tamboli's face, containing not a trace of warmth. Wise decision. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction of your vessel. Tamboli out. Yet, as the transmission ended, Valkon turned to Admiral Zerax. What will they do to us? The Admiral's hologram shimmered as she prepared to disconnect. They'll give you a fair trial, Commander. Unlike what you gave those medical personnel, humans are irritatingly committed to justice rather than vengeance. She paused. Though in this case, I'm not sure that works in your favor. Within minutes, the command deck was filled with human soldiers in sleek, matte black armor. They moved with practiced efficiency, securing the Zeraxian crew without firing a shot. A human officer approached Valkon, her helmet retracting to reveal a face set in granite determination. Commander Valkon Jur, you are under arrest for violations of the Galactic Accord, specifically Article 4, Protection of Medical Vessels. She produced restraints designed for Zeraxian physiology. You will be transported to Earth for trial. As they led him away, Valkon noticed something disturbing. Each human soldier wore a patch on their shoulder, a red cross on white background, the same symbol that had been on the hospital ship he'd destroyed. Beneath it was written a phrase in the human language. Catchery, never again. One of the human soldiers noticed his gaze and smiled grimly. You're wondering about our patches? Every member of the fleet of Fury wears one. We're not a standing force, you know. When the call goes out that a medical vessel has been attacked, every available ship and soldier volunteers. But there are hundreds of ships out there, Valkon said, bewildered. The soldier nodded. Yep, when you fired on that hospital ship, you didn't just attack some random vessel. You attacked something we hold sacred. Every one of us out there has been saved by a medic at some point, or had a loved one saved. Another soldier added, I was a patient on a hospital ship during the Proxima conflict. Aliens like you thought it was a valid military target. His eyes hardened. We made sure they never made that mistake again. As they marched Valkon through his own ship, he saw human medical teams already tending to injured Zeraxian crew members with the same care they would show their own species. It was confusing. "Why are you helping my crew?" he asked. The human medic applying a regenerative patch to a wounded Zeraxian didn't even look up. "Because that's what we do. That's what the people on the Mercy's Hand were doing when you killed them." The simple answer hit Valkon harder than any punishment could have. As they approached the docking bay where a human shuttle waited, Valkon saw a massive vessel through the viewports, easily 10 times the size of his battlecruiser. It dominated the space beyond. Unlike the sleek, aggressive lines of the human warships, this vessel was broad, white, and emblazoned with enormous red cross symbols. "What is that?" he asked, unable to hide his awe. The soldier escorting him followed his gaze and smiled sadly. "That's the Mercy's Promise. It's the flagship of our medical fleet. It arrived to recover the bodies of those you killed and treat the survivors. It's enormous. Largest hospital ship in the galaxy," the soldier confirmed. "It has facilities for treating over 50 different species, including yours." Valkon stared at the vessel, its pristine white hull gleaming in the starlight. "And you don't arm these ships?" "At all?" The soldier shook her head. "Not a single weapon. But why? How do you protect them?" The soldier gestured to the fleet surrounding them, hundreds of the most advanced warships humanity had ever built, all converged for a single purpose. "We protect them like this. Everyone knows you touch one of our hospital ships, you deal with all of us." She paused as they reached the shuttle. "Well, almost everyone knew. I guess you missed the memo." As Valkon was led aboard the human shuttle, he looked back at his battlecruiser, the pride of his career, now a symbol of his disgrace, and finally understood. Humans didn't protect their healers with weapons. They protected them with an unspoken promise: harm our healers, and the entire species responds as one. The galaxy was about to witness exactly how seriously humans took that promise. The shuttle door sealed shut, leaving Commander Valkon Jur to contemplate the enormity of his mistake as they accelerated toward Earth and whatever justice awaited him there. And behind them, the fleet of Fury maintained its vigilant formation, a steel testament to humanity's resolve: those who heal shall never stand alone. The journey to Earth took 7 rotations in the humans' faster-than-light transport, 7 rotations for Valkon to contemplate the cascade of errors that had led to this moment. 7 rotations surrounded by humans who treated him with a cold professionalism that was somehow worse than outright hatred. The detention cell aboard the human vessel Retribution was surprisingly comfortable, another confusing aspect of these bipeds. They imprisoned him, yet provided adequate food, climate control calibrated for Zeraxian physiology, and even entertainment feeds. Lieutenant Maya Okafor visited his cell daily, asking questions about the attack. Her dark skin contrasted with the stark white of her uniform, and her questions were precise, methodical. "Let me understand this correctly," she said during their 3rd session. "You fired on the Mercy's Hand because you believed that humans would disguise a warship as a medical vessel." Valkon's 4 arms fidgeted nervously. The hegemony would certainly employ such tactics, it seemed logical. Lieutenant Okafor's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried an edge. "Despite the fact that such an action violates every interspecies convention we've established over 3 centuries of space travel. The hegemony only joined your galactic accord recently," Valkon muttered defensively. "Yes, 3 years ago. Ample time to read the basic protocols regarding medical vessels." She made a note on her tablet. "Particularly since your own species requested 17 hospital ships to assist during the Belaran plague that affected your colonies last year." Valkon's head snapped up. "What? No, that's impossible. The hegemony would never request human aid." Lieutenant Okafor tapped her tablet, and a hologram appeared showing Zeraxian officials welcoming human medical ships. The timestamp matched her claim. "Your government didn't tell your military about this?" She raised an eyebrow. "Interesting." After she left, Valkon spent hours processing this revelation. The hegemony leadership had taught all commanders that humans were expansionist threats, yet they had secretly accepted human medical aid? Wonder. On the 7th day, Lieutenant Okafor arrived with different news. We're approaching Earth. You'll be transferred to the International Justice Complex in Geneva. What happens there? Valkon asked. You'll stand trial for war crimes against medical personnel. The proceedings will be public and broadcast throughout Galactic Accord space. And then? And that depends on the verdict, she answered simply. As they approached Earth, Valkon was permitted to view the planet from an observation deck, under heavy guard. The blue-green world grew larger in the viewport, surrounded by an astonishing array of orbital structure stations, shipyards, defense platforms. But what caught his attention was the endless stream of vessels entering and leaving the atmosphere. Your world is busy, he commented to Lieutenant Okafor, who stood nearby. That's normal traffic, she replied. But there's been an increase since the attack. Often. Because of me? Not everything is about you, Commander. Her tone was dry. Those are medical ships and personnel arriving from across human space. They're volunteering to replace those lost on the Mercy's hand. Valkon watched the vessels, hundreds of them, each marked with the same Red Cross symbol. So many? When healers fall, more rise to take their place, Lieutenant Okafor said. It's been our way since before we left Earth. The shuttle that took Valkon to the surface passed through dense cloud cover before revealing a city nestled between mountains and a vast lake. The architecture was a blend of ancient and ultra-modern structures coexisting in surprising harmony. The International Justice Complex dominated the city center, a circular building of transparent materials that seemed to change color as they approached. The building is designed to appear different to various species, Lieutenant Okafor explained, noting his fascination. Humans see it primarily in blue tones. Your species typically perceives it in purples. Why build it this way? To remind everyone that perspective matters. Truth may be universal, but how we perceive it isn't. Inside the complex, Valkon was processed efficiently and placed in another detention cell. This one featured a window overlooking a courtyard where humans and various alien species conversed. He recognized Traxians, Volari, even a few fellow Zeraxians in diplomatic attire. The trial began 3 days later. Valkon was escorted to a circular chamber where representatives from 27 species sat in tiered seating. At the center was a simple table where he was directed to sit. Opposite him sat 3 judges, a human, a Volari, and a Traxian. The human judge spoke first. Commander Valkon Jur, you stand accused of violating Article 4 of the Galactic Accord. The unprovoked attack on a clearly marked medical vessel resulting in 278 deaths. How do you plead? Valkon had been coached by his assigned legal representative, a surprisingly skilled Zoraxian advocate named Trell. Not guilty by reason of mistaken identity, he stated as instructed. The proceedings that followed were meticulous. Evidence was presented: communication logs, sensor readings, visual recordings from the Mercy's hand before its destruction. Survivors testified, medical personnel who had been treating patients when his weapons tore through their ship. A human doctor named Dr. Kiko Watanabe described how she had performed emergency surgery in a decompressing compartment, saving a child before being blown into space herself. She had survived only because a nurse sacrificed his own emergency pressure suit for her. When the hull breached, she recounted, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly, Nurse Paulo Reyes placed his suit on me before I even realized what was happening. His last words were, "Save the others, doctor." He was 26 years old. The chamber fell silent. Even the other Zeraxians in attendance lowered their heads. Week followed week as the prosecution built an impenetrable case. Valkon's defense seemed increasingly feeble, a fact not lost on Advocate Trell, who grew more frustrated with each session. You truly believed a vessel broadcasting emergency medical codes, following pre-approved routes, and clearly marked with medical symbols was a military vessel? The Volari judge asked during cross-examination. The hegemony has used such deceptions before. Valkon answered truthfully. Against whom? Valkon hesitated. Against our enemies. By our enemies. Do you mean other Zeraxians? The judge pressed. The historical record shows the hegemony primarily engaged in civil conflicts before joining the Accord. It was true. The hegemony had risen to power through conquering rival Zeraxian nations. They had indeed used medical vessels as covers for military operations against their own species. I followed my training, Valkon insisted. The human judge leaned forward. Did your training include reviewing the Galactic Accord protocols your government signed 3 years ago? No. Did it include any information about human medical ethics? No. Did you attempt to communicate with the vessel before firing? No. Valkon's skin darkened with shame. No. On the trial's final day, something unexpected happened. Admiral Tamboli herself took the stand. Admiral, began the prosecutor, as commander of the Fleet of Fury, what was your directive regarding the Zeraxian vessel after confirming it had attacked the Mercy's hand? Admiral Tamboli's steel-gray eyes found Valkon's. My orders were to secure the vessel and detain those responsible for prosecution. No casualties, unless absolutely necessary. You had overwhelming firepower. Why not simply destroy Commander Valkon's ship in retaliation? Because we are not barbarians, she replied simply. Medical vessels don't carry weapons because healing and harming are fundamentally opposed actions. The Fleet of Fury exists to protect healers, not to seek vengeance. After closing arguments, the judges deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the chamber was packed with observers from across the galaxy. Commander Valkon Jur, announced the human judge, this court finds you guilty of violating Article 4 of the Galactic Accord. For this crime, the standard punishment is life imprisonment. Valkon had expected this. He'd resigned himself to spending his remaining days in a cell. However, continued the Traxian judge, this case has revealed systemic failures beyond your individual actions. The Zeraxian hegemony deliberately withheld information from its military about the Galactic Accord provisions. The Valari judge nodded. Therefore, while you bear personal responsibility, we cannot ignore the environment that shaped your decisions. The human judge leaned forward. Commander Valkon Jur, this court sentences you to 5 years of service aboard the hospital ship Mercy's Promise. Murmurs erupted throughout the chamber. Valkon himself couldn't process what he'd heard. Service? He echoed. You will work under the supervision of human and alien medical personnel, explained the human judge. You will assist in treating patients, maintaining medical facilities, and, most importantly, learning what you destroyed when you fired on the Mercy's hand. I'm not a healer, Valkon protested. Neither were many who serve on hospital ships, replied the judge, but all can learn to help rather than harm. The sentence was carried out immediately. Valkon was transported to orbit where the massive white vessel he'd seen before the Mercy's Promise awaited. As he boarded, he was met by a small, elderly human female with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. Commander Valkon Jur, she greeted him without warmth. I am Dr. Eleanor Kotri, Chief Medical Officer of this vessel. You know who I am, he stated, suddenly feeling very small before this tiny human. Everyone aboard knows who you are and what you did. She gestured for him to follow her through the bustling corridors. Some wanted you spaced. I convinced them this was better. Why? She stopped and faced him directly. Because killing you solves nothing. Teaching you might prevent the next attack. The tour she gave revealed a vessel unlike anything in the hegemony fleet. 20 decks dedicated to medical care. Facilities for treating thousands of patients from dozens of species. Laboratories developing cures for diseases from across the galaxy. And everywhere, medical personnel, human and alien, working together with singular purpose. Tomorrow, Dr. Kotri informed him, you begin in waste management and sanitization. You'll work your way up from there if you prove capable. His quarters were small but adequate. That night, lying on his bunk, Valkon replayed the events that had brought him here. One decision, one moment of arrogance and assumption, had altered everything. The morning arrived with a sharp buzz from his door. A human orderly handed him a uniform white with blue trim, but lacking the Red Cross symbol worn by medical personnel. Dr. Khatri says to tell you that you earned that symbol, the orderly explained. No one gets it automatically. His first day passed in a blur of menial tasks, cleaning waste reclamation units, sanitizing surgical suites, disposing of biohazardous materials. The work was beneath the dignity of a hegemony commander, yet oddly tangible in its results. Kosksan. Weeks became months. Valkon's responsibilities gradually increased. He learned to assist nurses, prepare treatment rooms, eventually even help stabilize patients in emergency situations. He discovered his forearms were particularly useful in certain medical procedures, a fact that earned him grudging appreciation from the staff. During his 7th month aboard, the Mercy's Promise responded to a distress call from a mining colony experiencing a respiratory plague. As they approached the planet, Valkon felt a familiar tension. There's a hegemony military outpost near the colony, he told Dr. Khatri. They may react poorly to your arrival. Dr. Khatri nodded. Then you'll accompany me to the communication deck. Perhaps you can prevent another tragedy. When the hegemony vessels challenged their approach, Valkon spoke to his former comrades, explaining the hospital ship's mission. After tense negotiations, they were granted passage. On the planet's surface, Valkon worked alongside the medical teams, his unique knowledge of Zeraxian outposts proving unexpectedly valuable. When a group of hegemony soldiers arrived, weapons raised in suspicion, it was Valkon who stepped forward. These humans are healers, he told his kinsmen. They go where suffering exists, regardless of species or politics. I've seen this truth with my own eyes. The soldiers lowered their weapons, allowing the medical teams to proceed. That night, exhausted from treating patients, Valkon found Dr. Khatri waiting outside his quarters. You did well today, she acknowledged, the first genuine praise she'd offered him. I merely spoke the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. She handed him a small package. The medical staff took a vote. Inside was a uniform patch, the red cross on white background. I don't deserve this, he said, looking at the symbol he'd once dismissed as clever camouflage. Earning it means recognizing you don't deserve it, Dr. Khatri replied. Healers understand that saving lives isn't about deserving, it's about serving. And 3 years later, as his sentence neared its end, Valkon received an unexpected visitor aboard the Mercy's Promise. Admiral Tamboli arrived unannounced during a routine medical mission to a frontier world. She found him in pediatric care, using his 4 arms to simultaneously monitor equipment, administer medication, and comfort a frightened alien child during treatment. Commander Jur, she greeted him, using his military title for the first time since his capture. Medical Officer Jur now, he corrected gently, finishing with his young patient before turning to her, or just Valkon. They walked through the ship's arboretum, a peaceful space designed for patients' recuperation. Your sentence ends in 6 months, Admiral Tamboli observed. Have you considered your plans afterward? Valkon gestured to their surroundings. I've requested permission to remain aboard as a permanent medical officer. Dr. Khatri has approved it, pending final authorization. Admiral Tamboli raised an eyebrow. You would choose to stay aboard a human vessel, even after your obligation ends? I destroyed something precious before I understood its value, Valkon replied. I cannot restore those lives, but I can honor them by continuing their work. The Admiral studied him in silence before nodding. I'll approve the commission myself. As she turned to leave, Valkon called after her. Admiral, the fleet of Fury. Is it still assembled? No. The ships returned to their normal duties once justice was assured, but if another medical vessel were attacked, Admiral Tamboli's expression hardened. They would reassemble within hours. That is humanity's promise to those who heal. After she departed, Valkon returned to his duties, moving through the hospital ship's corridors with purpose rather than shame. He passed a memorial wall displaying images of those lost on the Mercy's hand, faces of many species who had dedicated themselves to healing. His greatest punishment had become his salvation. In learning what it meant to heal, he had begun to heal himself. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the silent promise remained. Those who healed would never stand alone. For wherever they journeyed, the fleet of Fury stood ready not for vengeance, but for justice. Not to destroy, but to protect those who saved lives across the galaxy, regardless of species, politics, or past enmities. That was humanity's answer when someone fired on a hospital ship, not merely overwhelming force, but overwhelming commitment to the principle that those who heal must be protected. It was a lesson Valkon Jur had learned at tremendous cost, a lesson he now taught to every Zeraxian officer who visited the Mercy's Promise on the cultural exchange program he'd established. Humans don't protect their healers with weapons, he would explain, echoing words once spoken to him. They protect them with a promise. Harm their healers, and you face not just their ships, but their unwavering conviction that healing transcends all boundaries. It was a conviction he now shared, a former destroyer transformed into a preserver of life.